Good day! We are the Group 5, reporting on our topic, Command Line Skills. Command Line Skills, what's that? We use our mouse and fingers to click images of icons and access files, programs, and folders on our devices. However, this is just one way for us to communicate with computers. The command line is a quick, powerful, text-based interface developers use to more effectively and efficiently communicate with computers to accomplish a wider set of tasks. Learning how to use it will allow you to discover all that your computer is capable of. The command line is an interface to your computer's files and directories. The command line provides a way to communicate with your computer. Its language takes the form of text-based input and output. So throughout this lesson, these command line skills will be based on the shell, Windows PowerShell. So what is PowerShell? PowerShell is a cross-platform task automation solution made up of command line shell, a scripting language, and a configuration management framework. PowerShell runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. As a scripting language, PowerShell is commonly used for automating the management of systems. It is used to build, test, and deploy solutions, often in continuous integration and continuous delivery environments. Here we have an overview of the topics, shell, commands, command type, variables, coding, and control statements. With that, let's start.
What is a shell and why should we care? A shell is a computer program that presents a command line interface which allows you to control your computer using commands entered with a keyboard instead of controlling graphical user interface or GUIs with a mouse, keyboard, touchscreen combination. Shell is a program that takes commands from the keyboard and gives them to the operating system to perform. There are many reasons to learn about the shell. The shell makes your work less boring. In bioinformatics, you often need to repeat tasks with a large number of files. With the shell, you can automate those repetitive tasks and leave you free to do more exciting things. Shell makes your work less error-prone. When humans do the same thing 100 different times or even 10 times, they are likely to make mistakes. Your computer can do the same thing 1,000 times with no mistakes. The shell makes your work more reproducible. When you carry out your work in the command line rather than a GUI, your computer keeps a record of every step that you've carried out, which you can use to redo your work when you need to. It also gives you a way to communicate unambiguously what you've done, so that others can inspect or apply your process to new data. Some examples of shell are MS-DOS shell, command.com, a command shell for Unix-like systems that was originally created as part of the Berkeley Software Distribution or BSD. Second is the CSH or C shell, the Unix shell command execution program, often called a program interpreter. Third one is the KSH or Korn shell, the Unix shell command execution program, often called a command interpreter. The fourth example is the PowerShell, a task automation and configuration management program from Microsoft consisting of a command line shell and the associated scripting language. The last one example I have here is the SH or shell script, a text file that contains a sequence of commands for a Unix-based operating system.
Moving on to the commands. Commands for PowerShell are known as commandlets. In addition to commandlets, PowerShell allows you to run any command available in your system. So what is a commandlet? Commandlets are native PowerShell commands, not standalone executables. Commandlets are collected into PowerShell modules that can be loaded on demand. Commandlets can be written in any compiled .NET language or in the PowerShell scripting language itself. The commandlet names. PowerShell uses a verb-noun name pair to name commandlets. Say for example, the get command commandlet included in PowerShell is used to get all the commandlets that are registered in the command shell. The verb identifies the action that the commandlet performs, and the noun identifies the resource on which the commandlet performs its action. Windows PowerShell command prompt isn't case sensitive, so these commands can be typed in either upper or lowercase. Here we have some helpful commands that you can use in Windows PowerShell. The get command. The get command is an easy-to-use reference commandlet that brings up all the command available for use in your current session. The get help. The get help command is essential for anyone using the PowerShell, providing quick access to the information you need to run and work with all of the available commands. Set execution policy. Microsoft disables scripting by default to prevent malicious scripts from executing in the PowerShell environment. Developers want to be able to write and execute scripts, so the set execution policy command enables you to control the level of security surrounding PowerShell scripts. So you can set one of four security levels. The restricted. This is the default security level which blocks PowerShell scripts from running in the security level. You can only enter commands interactively. All signed. This security level allows scripts to run only if they are signed by a trustworthy publisher. Remote signed. In this security level, any PowerShell scripts that were created logically are permitted to run. Scripts created remotely are permitted to run only if they've been assigned by a reputable publisher. Unrestricted. As its name suggests, the unrestricted security level permits all scripts to run by removing all restrictions from the execution policy. Get service. It's also helpful to know what services are installed on the system. You can easily access this information with this command. Convert to HTML. If you need to extract data that you can use in a report or send to someone else, the convert to HTML is one simple way to do so. Clear history. What if you want to clear the entries from your command history? So you can use this clear history commandlet. The where object. Where object is one of the most important commandlets to know, as it enables you to take a data set and pass it further down to your pipeline for filtering. The set authenticode signature. If you want to keep your work secure in production and prevent modification, use set authenticode signature to add an authenticode signature to a script or file. The get process. It's much like getting a list of available services, and it's often useful to be able to get a quick list of all the currently running processes. Clear content. If you want to delete the content of an item but retain the item itself, you'll use the clear content commandlet. You can also use this command to clear the contents of all files with a specified file extension. Checkpoint computer. If you're making major changes or running a risky experiment, you can set a restore point in your machine with the checkpoint computer commandlet. Note that you can only create a restore point using this commandlet once every 24 hours, and if you run the command again, it will keep the previous restore point. The compare object. It's often useful to be able to compare two objects directly. You can do this using compare object, which generates a report on the differences between two sets. Convert to XML. Use the Convert to XML commandlet to create an XML-based representation of an object. This is also called serialization, and it's a useful process for saving data for later reuse. New Web Service Proxy. Um, New Web Service Proxy creates a Web Service Proxy object that enables you to use and manage the web service from within the PowerShell. This commandlet is a beautiful thing for developers as it makes it unnecessary to write a lot of complex code to try to accomplish something in PowerShell when you can simply call another service that already makes it possible. Select Object. The Select Object commandlet selects the specified properties of a single object or group of objects. Additionally, it can select unique objects from an array or a specified number of objects from the beginning or end of an array. So, these are other commandlets with similar functions, including the select string. These finds text in strings or files. The select XML. This finds text in an XML string or document. Next, the set alias. Set alias is a great command for enhancing productivity. It allows you to set an alias for a commandlet or other commandlet in the current session. So, next, write progress. Who doesn't love a status bar? Monitor your progress using write progress, which displays a progress bar within a Windows PowerShell command window. The get counter. Get counter gets real-time performance counter data from the performance monitoring instrumentation in Windows OS. It's used to get performance data from local or remote computers at specific sample intervals that you specify. The Invoke Troubleshooting Pack. Troubleshooting packs are collections of PowerShell scripts and assemblies that help you troubleshoot, diagnose, and repair common system problems. The Start Sleep. If you need to suspend the activity in a script or session, use Start Sleep, which halts the activity for a specified time period. And if you need to pause one or more running services, you would use Suspend Service. Additional commands: change directory. Change directory to what directory you want. To view folders in a specific drive, input ls. It lists the files and folders of the specific directory. You can autofill by pressing tab. You can clear the shell by typing clear or cls. And to make new folder, type mkdir and then the name. Echo repeats the string you typed. Double quotes read the string as it is. The greater than symbol. This makes the string you type to a format like text file. Cat displays text in the text file. Double greater than symbol. This appends to the previous string you typed. If one arrow changes the text overall.
So, command type. In the Windows command shell, type is a built-in command which displays the contents of a text file. Use the type command to view a text file without modifying it. In PowerShell, type is a built-in alias to the getContent cmdlet, which also displays the contents of a file but using a different syntax. So, set alias. An alias is an alternate name or nickname for cmdlet or for command element, such as script file, or executable file. You can use the alias instead of the command name in any PowerShell commands. So, function. A function is a list of PowerShell statements that has a name that you assign. When you run a function, you type the function name. The statements in the list run as if you had typed them at the command prompt. Functions can be as simple as PowerShell copy. cmdlet. A cmdlet pronounced as a commandlet. is a small lightweight command that is used in the Windows PowerShell environment. A cmdelete typically exists as a small script that is intended to perform a single specific function such as copying files and changing directories. A cmdelete and its relevant parameters can be entered in PowerShell command line for an immediate execution or included as a part of longer PowerShell script that can be executed as desired. So, application, a command type that shows exe file in the computer with their sources. From its name, a command type for applications. Here are some examples of application commands. So one of application command is the alg.exe. So alg.exe is a Windows process file. It is also known as an application layer gateway services which is used for internet connections sharing and firewall.
Good morning, I'm Stephen John Lungakit. I'm reporting variable. A variable is a unit of memory in which values are stored. In PowerShell, variables are represented by text string that begin with a dollar sign, such as $A, $process, or $my var, my $my_var. Variable names aren't case sensitive and can include space and special character. But variable names that include special characters and spaces are difficult to use and should be avoided. So, pwede ra ka makabot sa imo variable pero ginasuggest yun na dili lisod-lisodon ang variable name. You can store any type of object in a variable, including integers, string, arrays, and hash tables, and objects that represent process, services, event logs, and computers. PowerShell variables are loosely typed, which means they aren't limited to a particular type of object. A single variable can even contain a collection of array or different types of object at the same time. So, ang variable sa PowerShell mo diretso ra siya kuan, mo diretso ra siya identify pareha nang sa example. You can use a type attribute and cast notation to ensure a variable can contain only specific object types or object that can be converted to that type. If you try to assign a value of another type, PowerShell tries to convert the value of its type. If the type can't be converted, the assignment statement fails. So para sa example, gibutngan og what type of object ang variable, example int, kaya ang naka-assign man sa variable kay int, ma-error siya, inigbutngan siya og string value. To use cast notation, enter a type name, enclose and bracket before the variable name on the left side of the assignment statement. The following example creates a $number variable that contain only integer, a $word variable that contain only strings, and a $date variable that contains only date time objects. Put nga na nimo siya open close bracket before a variable name ang sulod sa bracket ang usa din siya klase nga variable, example string, int, or others. There are several types of variable in PowerShell: user-created variables, automatic variables, preference variables. User-created variables are created and maintained by the user. By default, the variables that you create at the PowerShell command line exist only while the PowerShell window is open. When the PowerShell windows is closed, the variables are deleted. To save a variable, add it in your PowerShell profile. You can also create variables in script with global script or local scope. Automatic variables store the state of PowerShell. These variables are created by PowerShell, and PowerShell changes their value as required to maintain their accuracy. User can change the value of this variable. For example, the $PS home variable stores the path to the PowerShell's installation directory. Preference variable. Preference variables store user preference for PowerShell. These variables are created by PowerShell and are populated by default values. User can change the values of these variables. For example, the $maximum history count variable determines the maximum number of entries in the session history.
So, here strings. The quotation rules for here strings are slightly different. A here string is a single quoted or double quoted string surrounded by the @ signs. Quotation marks within the here string are interpreted literally. A here string spans multiple lines, begins with opening mark followed by a new line, ends with a new line following by a closing mark, includes every line between the opening and closing marks as part of a single string. Like regular strings, variables are replaced by their values in double-quoted here strings. And in single-quoted here strings, variables are not replaced by their values. You can see you can use here strings for any text, but they are particularly useful for the following kinds of text. Text that contains literal quotation marks, multiple lines of text such as text in an HTML or XML block, the help text for a script or function document. So over here we have the examples for the double quotes and single quotes in here string. Here we have the syntax for it. So @ sign, double quote, then you need to go to a new line, which you enter, then you input your string, then new line again, so you enter again, then the double quotation, then @ sign. Here, then example, we have at double quotation. Even if you have not created a profile, the path of the profile file is $sign profile, period. Then new line, then double quotation, @ sign. The output for this will be, even if you have not created a profile, the path of the profile file is, then it is in double quotation, so it calls to the specific, which is the $sign profile. So it calls to the profile location, which is C user documents, Windows PowerShell, Microsoft PowerShell profile.ps1. So it substitutes to the called value. Then in single quotes, we have syntax @ sign, single quotation, then the string, then single quotation, then the @ sign. An example, here we have @ sign, single quotation. The $sign profile variable contains the path of your PowerShell profile. Then enter single quotation, @ sign. So it just literally states the string. So the S profile variable contains the path of your PowerShell profile. It does not substitute to the called value. The code inside the here string depend on what code type you use. For the double quotes, the variables are replaced by their values. Substitution is happening. Then for single quotes, the variables are interpreted literally and reproduced exactly.
What is a control statement? A control statement give you structured control over the sequence of application statements like loops and conditional tests. It also allows you to change the input stream to another file, open and close files, and perform a variety of other operations. So for the uses, PowerShell control statements can be broken down into 3 sections. First, we have conditional statement, used when you want to execute line of code depending upon some condition. Second, we have looping statements, used when you want to perform some task multiple times. And third, we have flow control statements, used along with conditional and loop statements to control the flow of execution. So let's tackle the 3 sections one by one. So for conditional statement, we have if statement. execute the script if condition evaluates to true. Second, we have else if statement. Execute the script if condition evaluates to true and all else if conditions before it false. Third, we have else statement. Execute the scripts that follows it when none of the conditions in else if evaluates to true. Last one, we have switch statement. Alternative for multiple if else statements. So for the looping statement, first we have here while. Code inside the while loop will execute if condition evaluates to true. While in do while is similar to while loop, only difference is it will execute at least once. That means it will execute do a block for the first time and while block is a condition is true. So for do, this block executes for first and once when execution starts. While in while, execution of statement 1 and statement 2 again totally depends on the success of the condition. We also have for. Code inside for loop will execute if condition evaluates true. So in this section, it assigned initial value for any variable. This section runs once for the first time. Condition. In condition parts, we write our condition for which loop will run, which means the execution of statement block always depends on the success of condition parts. If the condition is true, then statement block will execute, else not. We also have operation. In this block, we can increase, decrease, or change the value of the initializing a variable or any things according to our requirements. We also have for each optimized version for loop used to perform action for each item of array, and even you don't need to write any code to extract item from array. A typical use of the for loop is to operate on a subset of the values in an array. So if you want to iterate all values in an array, consider using a for each statement. Many times one for loop is not enough to complex our requirements. We should try to avoid nesting loops as their time complexity may go very high if not handled properly. And the last one, we have flow control statements. So we have break. The break statement in PowerShell is used to terminate the loop. When the break statement is executed inside the inner loop, it terminates the loop execution, and when it is placed in the outer loop, it terminates the entire loop including child loops. And the last one is continue. Continue statement in PowerShell is used to skip the current execution of the loop and return to the execution of the top of the innermost loop. Continue statement is generally used with the conditional statement in which controlled by loops like while, for, and for each. When the continue statement is executed inside the loop, it skips the current iteration and moves to the innermost loop for the next iteration. So once again, we are the group 5, and thank you so much for listening.